Good morning. Thank you to everyone for joining us today, especially Congress members Gerald Nadler, Dan Goldman, and Adriana Espaya, Assembly Member Michael Lasher. And most importantly, thank you to the 11 members of the Camp Ruby family who traveled all the way from Spain for this solemn anniversary. We are also pleased to welcome a representative from Siemens, Alvaro Senador Gomez Lazaro, President of Rail Infrastructure for Siemens Mobility, North America. Siemens is the global corporation where Augustine and Mercé both worked for nearly 2 decades. And thank you to the Consul General of Spain, Marta de Blas Mayordomo, for joining us today. My name is Sydney Korick, and I'm an attorney at Gersowitz, Lebo, and Korick. I'm joined by our co-counsel, Vincent Lesch, a partner at Kreindler Kreindler. He will speak about the critical life-saving legislation in just a few moments. Our goal is twofold today: to honor the victims of last year's horrific crash in the Hudson and to honor their memories by turning this tragedy into action. Before we proceed further, we would like to observe a moment of silence for the 5 members of the beautiful Escobar Camp Ruby family. Mercedes Montal, would you please join us to read the names of your loved ones?
Agustín Escobar Cañadas, 9 years old. Marcé Camprubí Montan, 39 years old. Agustín Escobar Camprubí, 10 years old. Marcé Escobar Camprubí, 8 years old. Víctor Escobar Camprubí, 4 years old.
Thank you, Mercedes. They left this world far too soon. Their helicopters do not just rip apart mid-flight and fall from the sky. There are approximately 30,000 sightseeing helicopter flights a year in Manhattan. But the one on April 10th, 2025 went horribly wrong just 16 minutes into the flight. 1 year later, we are still awaiting the official findings from the National Transportation Safety Board, the entity responsible for investigating every civil aviation accident in the United States. And this agency has been busy. From last month's Air Canada collision at LaGuardia Airport, resulting in 2 fatalities and more than 43 injuries, to the November UPS Airlines cargo flight in Louisville that killed all 3 crew members, as well as 11 people on the ground, injuring 23 others. Aviation disasters are becoming far too commonplace. I would now like to introduce United States Congressman Jerry Nadler as prime sponsor of this legislation. He has long been a champion of helicopter safety along Manhattan's west side. Representative Nadler.
Thank you. Good morning. 1 year ago, a few steps from here, a horrific tragedy took place. As we all know, tomorrow marks the painful 1-year anniversary of a deadly helicopter crash, and we are here to remember the 6 people who lost their lives. Their losses left a gaping hole in the lives of their family, friends, and communities. I offer my sincere condolences to the family of the victims, a number of whom have joined us here today, and I commend them for turning their profound grief over their loss into valiant advocacy for the safety of all. In the years since the crash, this incident has prompted reflection, investigation, and renewed calls for vigilance and safety, even as the memory of those lost continues to be honored with solemn remembrance. The impact of these untimely deaths has reverberated far beyond this site and has brought much needed attention to the acute necessity of increased safety for helicopters. That is why I am proud to be introducing the Helicopter Safety and Parity Act today. The bill puts forth a simple notion. Helicopters should be held to the same safety standards as airplanes. Such a notion is common sense, and it's time for our laws and regulators to catch up. Achieving such parity is critical to dramatically reducing the risk of crashes like the one that took 6 lives 1 year ago. The bill achieves safety parity between airplanes and helicopters by mandating the development of new safety rules and standards, requiring the use of specific safety equipment, applying airline equivalent equivalent maintenance standards, and ensuring strict enforcement and regular oversight. The bill also provides funding for inspectors to implement this new safety regime. Put together, this approach addresses the safety gaps most likely to reduce the risk of a similar crash in the future. I want to thank the members of the bereaved families for being here and for their continued work on this important issue. I also want to thank Representatives Maliotakis, Menendez, Goldman, and Espaillat for co-leading this bipartisan bill with me in Congress. I appreciate the other elected officials here with us today for coming to show their support. Together, we can fight to ensure that reasonable safety standards are applied to helicopters and reduce the risk that any other families experience a tragedy like the one we saw a year ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman Bernadler. I'd now like to introduce Representative Dan Goldman.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here today. It is unfortunate that we have to be here today to commemorate the 1-year anniversary of a tragic accident that could have and should have been avoided. But I'm proud that we are here today to turn grief into action by introducing the Helicopter Safety and Parity Act. 30,000 tourist helicopters travel around Lower Manhattan, the entire borough of Manhattan, every year. That is a tremendous number. It's far too many. And separately, we are working on legislation to reduce that number because of the broad environmental and quality of life impacts that these helicopter flights have. But today we're focused on the safety of them. And the notion that helicopters have not been treated the same as airplanes is absurd. Obviously, and obviously they should, and we should not have to be here 1 year after a tragic accident to put this into law. This is, as Congressman Nadler said, common sense legislation. We will enhance the maintenance requirements. We'll add new and expanded safety standards. We'll upgrade technology so that it meets today's requirements and availability. And we're going to make the helicopter industry safer for all so that we don't have to be here again commemorating a tragic and avoidable loss of such a beautiful family. I appreciate very much the leadership that Congressman Nadler has taken on this bill. It is a pleasure to work with him on so many of these helicopter issue bills, as well as Congressman Menendez, who's a leader in this space as well, who could not be here today. I want to acknowledge and thank my fellow co-lead, Congressman Espaillat, as well. And I think what you see behind is a groundswell of support for this common sense legislation, from the Manhattan Borough President Brad Hoylman to Assembly Member Tony Simone to State Senator Eric Bottcher. This is a critical issue for all of us who call this area home. And we are going to build a coalition to get this bipartisan bill across the finish line. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Dan Goldman. Next, I would like to introduce Representative Adriana Espaillat.
Thank you. Good morning. I want to first congratulate and thank Congressman Jerry Nadler, Congressman Bowman, and all associated with this important piece of legislation, a bipartisan legislation, which means, as many of you may know, that it has a real shot at being made into law. Now, we're here to honor the memory of the Escobar Camprubí family on the tragic accident that took their lives, including, of course, 3 children. Tragically, this is not the first time that it happened. And unfortunately, unless measures are taken to prevent this from happening, it could happen again. And so thousands of helicopter rides occurred here in the city of New York. We see them as far up as Washington Heights, the northern tip of Manhattan. We see them on the east side of Manhattan and all around the city. And it is mind-boggling that there are not strict regulations for these flights, as they present a clear and present danger to the riders, to visitors, to New Yorkers in general. And so these common sense regulations that are being proposed, I think will bring safety to all of us. And it is so important. It is so important that in an area that has one of the most congested air traffic in the entire United States, because we have, of course, New York Airport, LaGuardia, Kennedy, Teterboro, Westchester, all of these airports are in the area, bringing heavy air traffic. It is mind-boggling that we don't have stricter regulations. And so we saw what happened in Washington, D.C. with a helicopter and a plane. And also, of course, we saw what happened here to folks that came to visit our great city. As we prepare for the World Cup, more people will come to the city of New York and will want to get on these helicopters. We must have safety regulations that are critical and important to all New Yorkers and our visitors. Estamos aquí para recordar la memoria de la familia Escobar Camprubí, particularmente 3 niños perdieron su vida también aquí. Y pensamos firmemente y apoyamos el proyecto de ley del congresista Nadler, que impone regulaciones más estrictas con referencia a los vuelos de helicópteros. Entendemos que en una área que tiene el tráfico aéreo más congestionado, a lo mejor de todo el país, donde tenemos el aeropuerto de Newark, el Kennedy, LaGuardia, Teterboro y Westchester, que estos vuelos deben de tener restricciones estrictas que protejan la vida no solamente de personas visitantes, turistas que vienen aquí a la ciudad de Nueva York, sino también a los residentes de nuestra gran ciudad. Por eso estamos aquí apoyando a Jerry Nadler, quien es el auspiciador principal del proyecto, y los otros congresistas. We're here to support this bill, and we're going to push hard to make it a reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Espaillat. I would now like to invite my colleague, Vincent Lesch of Kreindler Law, who brings an incredible wealth of knowledge and experience in aviation law to this matter. Vincent?
Thank you, Sydney. Over the past year, our firms have grown very close to the Escobar Camprubí families. Last year, I had the honor of visiting the family in Spain, along with Jeff Corrick, who's out of the country today and unfortunately unable to join us. The Escobar Camprubí's loved ones and colleagues that we met in Spain painted a portrait of the impact that Augustine and Mercedes had on their jobs, their families, and their community, as well as the deep bond shared by their beautiful children, August, Mercedes, and Victor. Soon you'll have an opportunity to hear more about the Escobar Camprubí family from Joan and Berta Camprubí Montal in both English and Spanish. One of the best ways we can honor the victims of this tragedy is by closing a long-standing regulatory loophole and raising the standards for sightseeing tour helicopters across the United States. The legislation that is being discussed today will have the ability to improve helicopter safety not just here in New York, but across the country, wherever sightseeing helicopters proliferate, like Las Vegas, Los Angeles, and Hawaii, to name just a few. Just 2 weeks ago in Hawaii, 3 people were killed in a sightseeing helicopter crash, including 2 people from Massachusetts. So this is a nationwide issue. And I thank all the congressmen and women today who are sponsoring this bill and putting it forward. There is a recent article in The Atlantic with the headline, "American Aviation is Near Collapse." The reporter describes how the U.S. aviation industry is literally coming apart at the seams due to decades of disinvestment and political dysfunction. We saw the effects of that up close when a Bell 206 helicopter came apart over the Hudson River last year. But regulatory gaps alone don't cause tragedies like this. They are exploited by operators who cut corners and manufacturers who fail to demand or deliver the highest safety performance. In a perfect world, every helicopter operator and manufacturer would rigorously exceed minimum standards, but the reality is that some do not, and the consequences are fatal. The industry has a professional and an ethical obligation and duty to put safety first, especially when the precious lives like these are on board. I want to make something clear before we go on. We're not here to demonize the helicopter industry, and we're not here to ban all sightseeing helicopters. This is a targeted, common sense proposal, as all the congressmen have said, designed to ensure that sightseeing helicopters are held to the highest possible standards, and the regulators are given the resources they need to enforce those standards, preventing tragedies like this from ever happening again. Now I'd like to invite Joan Camprubí Montal to say a few words in English, followed by his sister Berta in Spanish, for the Spanish speakers here in the United States and on the live stream from Spain. Joan.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. It's really hard to be back here today, standing on the banks of the Hudson River after a huge tragedy. 11 of us, part of the family, came from Spain here to remember our loved ones that went away too far soon. We want to keep their memories alive, and we believe the best way to do that is by strengthening the safety standards for sightseeing helicopters. We think that no other family should have experienced the loss of the family that we experienced. This event is not a single crash, not a single type of helicopter, not a single moment of failure. We do think that responding to the tragedy strikes is too late. So for us, this is personal. Today, 5 members of our family, really young family, really happy family, took one of those helicopters, smiling and having a great time in New York. But they're not anymore with us again. That's why we want to avoid more people to suffer what we suffered. And aviation safety for us should be not a choice, should be a responsibility. Our prayer is that no family will suffer this again. And we want to remember them every day. That's why we want to also thank all the lawmakers, all the congressmen, Neller and the team all this support because we think that if we change laws, we can prevent this type of accidents. We also want to thank all the media being here because for us represents giving voice of suffering. You might think that it's that we want to suffer too much doing these type of events, but for us it's a way to remember them because if we remember them, they're still alive with us, and for us that's really important. That's why tomorrow will be the exact year anniversary. We will also do a mass at St. Patrick's in the morning. We'll also do a floral trip to the river, and we will try to say to close also the loop with the whole family because last year I had to get that trip alone because the family was between the shock. We had really kids at younger ages, and it's not easy for do that. But today we're closing that loop with that trip, and also we're starting our new foundation to honor them. So we will also bring details to make sure that people continue smiling, people continue enjoying life, and continue supporting and helping others. So thanks.
Hola, hola a todos. Hoy es un día difícil para toda nuestra familia, pero hemos viajado desde España y estamos aquí todos juntos, aquí en la orilla del río Hudson, para recordar a nuestros seres queridos que nos dejaron hace un año de manera injusta e inesperada. Queremos mantener vivos sus recuerdos y honrarles, y por ello creemos que la mejor manera de hacerlo es reforzando los estándares de seguridad de los helicópteros turísticos. Ninguna otra familia debería tener que pasar por el sufrimiento y la pérdida que ha vivido la nuestra. Este evento no va de un único accidente, de un solo tipo de helicóptero o de un fallo en concreto. Reaccionar después de que ocurra una tragedia ya es demasiado tarde, porque desafortunadamente no se puede revertir. Para nosotros esto es personal, esto es real. Hoy hablamos de nuestros 3 queridos niños y de sus padres, que partieron con toda la ilusión del mundo a hacer el viaje de sus vidas y nunca más volvieron a casa. ¿Por qué se hacen las mismas preguntas una y otra vez tras cada accidente? La seguridad en la aviación no debería de ser una opción, sino una responsabilidad. Nuestro mayor deseo para el futuro es que ninguna familia tenga que pasar por lo que nosotros hemos vivido. Gracias a todos por estar aquí y por recordar a nuestros queridos Agustín, Marcé, Agus Junior, Marcé Junior y Víctor. También nos gustaría agradecer a todos los legisladores que están aquí hoy, especialmente al congresista Nadler y a sus compañeros, así como a los medios de comunicación presentes para hacer difusión. Muchas gracias de corazón. Mañana haremos la misa en St. Patrick's a las 9. Mañana será el aniversario. Haremos después una ofrenda floral en el río Hudson. Y como ha dicho mi hermano, pues también estamos con el tema de la fundación para honrarlos y pasar el duelo juntos y también pues seguir sonriendo como eran ellos, siguiendo su ejemplo. Muchas gracias y familia Escobar Camproví siempre con nosotros.
Thank you. Next, I would like to introduce Manhattan Borough President Brad Hoylman.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm Brad Hoylman Siegel, the Manhattan Borough President. And first, let me just say how heartbroken I am, how I share in your grief, which is incalculable. But so appreciate your courage for being here and for taking this trip, which must be so very painful. this was a preventable tragedy. And it's astounding that it is taking so many years to bring the standards for federal aviation up to the level where tourists can think to fly safely in helicopters. The thing I think about as Manhattan Borough President and representing one of the most densely populated areas of the country and the world is what would have happened had this accident occurred over land. How many more lives would have been lost had this crash occurred in Lower Manhattan, above Wall Street, above the seaport, above Tribeca? It is past time that we pass this legislation in Congress. My colleagues and I at the state and local level have for years railed about the safety or the lack thereof of tourist choppers. We know that they don't have the same standards as other aircraft. Thank you, Congressman Nadler, for your historic advocacy, along with Congressman Espaillat and Congressman Goldman, for bringing this issue to bear. The fact is that sightseeing and tourist flights are considered one of the most accident-prone sectors. They are the third leading category of fatal helicopter accidents in the United States. Over the last 40 years, 25 people have been killed in crashes involving sightseeing helicopters in New York City. Well, it is time now to move Congressman Nadler's legislation. It is time now for the city of New York to end the tourist concession at 2 helipads in New York unless Congressman Nadler's legislation is passed. We should not continue to put tourists in harm's way. We should make it so that everyone who visits New York City has a safe and enjoyable experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd now like to introduce New York State Senator Eric Bottcher.
Thank you so much. I think we all remember the horror we felt a year ago when this tragedy took place. Seeing the horrible footage on television, I thought then, as I'm thinking now, the similarities between this young family and my own family when we would go on trips. My brother and sister and I and my parents, they would create these excursions for us, these adventures for us, wherever we went. See us experiencing joy on our trips. And that's what these young parents were doing with their kids here in New York City. Their deaths were 100% preventable, but they will not be in vain. Because of this legislation, Congressman Nadler and his colleagues have introduced that will enact common sense reform to the tourist helicopter industry. They will save lives. So in the memory of this family and the pilot, let's get this legislation passed. Let's get it passed now and save lives and prevent anything like this from ever happening again.
Thank you. I would now like to introduce New York State Assembly Member Tony Simone.
Thank you. My heart and love go out to your families. None of the things any of us will say will probably be enough for the grief you're going through. But as my colleagues I said, I want to thank Congressmember Terry Nadler and Espaillat and Goldman for their leadership on this. Our aviation industry is a disaster. We should be able to safely fly with limited capacity when tourists come to visit our city. This was preventable, and I hope we now can turn grief into action and pass the Helicopter Safety and Parity Act. It's common sense that we ensure that the safety standards are similar or exactly the same to airplanes. And thank you for also pushing for funding to ensure they're inspected for this. We need to prevent this from ever happening again. And my heart and love go out to you. Now let's turn grief into action. And thank you for your courage to move forward on this.
Thank you. I'd now like to introduce New York State Assembly Member Micah Lasher.
Thank you so much. My heart goes out to your family, and I'm filled with gratitude that you've taken this horrific tragedy, the loss of this beautiful family, and channeled it into an effort to make sure that no one else should have to go through what you have been through. And Congressman Nadler's legislation represents the basic idea that government has a responsibility to ensure people's safety. The notion that we are relying on operators that are cutting every corner in the book to look out for people's lives is insane. And we have a tragedy right here on the Hudson that is evidence of that. And it is our collective obligation to make sure that that never occurs again. That requires government to act. That requires passage of the Helicopter Safety Parity Act. And I know that Congressman Nadler, Congressman Espaillat will champion this legislation. And I give my commitment that I will carry on that fight in any capacity that I'm able to until it is the law. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd now like to introduce a representative from Assembly Member Linda Rosenthal's office.
Good morning, everyone. I'm here on behalf of Assembly Member Linda Rosenthal, who represents the Upper West Side and parts of Hell's Kitchen. She first, of course, wanted to extend her deepest condolences for your unimaginable loss. We must do everything we can to prevent another tragedy before it's too late. And that is why Assembly Member Rosenthal is extremely grateful for Congressman Nadler's efforts to pass the Helicopter Safety Parity Act. The Assembly member is also deeply committed to doing everything she can at the state level to push her colleagues in Congress to take up this crucial legislation. So thank you for being here. Thank you all.
I'd like to thank everyone one more time for being here on today, and open it up for a few on-topic questions. And just please, on topic and short and sweet. So right now, for sightseeing tour helicopters, if they basically take off and land from the same place and don't go more than 25 miles away from that place, they're held to one of the lowest standards, Part 91 standards. They should be following what's called Part 135, which is for charter, and Congressman Nadler's bill and the congressional delegation's bill is going to raise that even higher to be equivalent with the safety standards for commercial airliners, as opposed to just any other helicopter. If you're a fare-paying sightseer, you should get that standard just like you expect getting on any commercial airliner. All of those standards. And the biggest thing is those, by operating under that loophole, there is less FAA oversight right now. The FAA is not required to inspect them and oversee them in the same ways. And so by allowing that sightseeing loophole, which is a very broad one, it's kind of swallowed the rule, unfortunately. So we need the heightened standards that the congressman has proposed. So the NTSB is still working a year later. We're waiting for them to release all of the evidence from the case. They have exclusive custody to begin. And then we're going to complete our investigation. Today is about raising the safety standards and remembering the Campo V. Escobar family. The NTSB investigates every civil aviation accident in the country. They're a relatively small agency for their broad mission, and unfortunately, it takes them too long to investigate things like this. I rarely see them complete things in under a year, but we're pushing them and hope to get a further update from them soon. Unfortunately, it just takes time, and we're all frustrated by that because we want to know what happened. It's tough to say from the preliminary report, but if that operator had been subject to these standards, they would have gotten more than ramp checks or random FAA oversight. They would get regular inspections. They would look over logbooks. They would do everything that you see going on at a big commercial airport every day, as opposed to the sporadic things that these sightseeing helicopters have to do. So it's tough to say, but I can tell you, undoubtedly, this bill will make things safer.
Yeah, well, the timeline is hopefully before the end of the year. And we have what we need is bipartisan cooperation. We have that with a number of Democratic colleagues, as you've seen here today, and Congresswoman Maliotakis, who's a Republican. And we're hopeful that we'll be able to pass it before the end of the year, which is the end of this Congress.
Thank you, everyone, again. Thank you, Congressmen and representatives. I think that's it for today. And thank you all again for coming out.